Hi, and welcome to day 25 here at TorahFamilyLiving.com, where we're exploring His Word and writing out the Scriptures. And this month we've been looking at my identity in Messiah Yahshua. Today we're looking at Romans chapter 8, verses 12 through 17. So please join me as we go to Romans. Romans chapter 8, starting in verse 12. So then, brothers, we are not debtors to the flesh, to live according to the flesh. For if you live according to the flesh, you are going to die. But if by the Spirit you put to death the deeds of the body, you shall live. For as many as are led by the Spirit of Elohim, these are sons of Elohim. For you did not receive the spirit of bondage again to fear, but you received the Spirit of adoption, by whom we cry out, Abba, Father. The Spirit Himself bears witness with our spirit that we are children of Elohim, and if children, also heirs, truly heirs of Elohim, and co-heirs with Messiah, if indeed we suffer with Him, in order that we also be exalted together. Wow. I don't know about you, but as I read the Scriptures, I just see so many things. Sometimes I just need to read one sentence and I can stop there and reflect on that all day. There are so many things here I would like for us to look at. First of all, he talks about we are not debtors to the flesh. And yet so often we have our life, the only things we focus on is the here and now. We focus on ourselves because we think only of today. We don't think about eternity. We don't think about relationship as we're leaving the house. Do we ask the Father to go with us? Do we ask the Spirit of God to bring to remembrance His Word so that we can walk in the way that we're supposed to and be the example and the ambassador as we leave our house? Even if we're just on the farm, every time we step out the door, we're representing Messiah. As we're in the house, we're representing Him as well. But what does that look like? Well, I know that we live in a world that is physical and flesh, and there are things about that the Father and the Son determined that it was good for us to stay here so that we could be the ambassadors, the light, the storytellers of the good news, to compel men and women to come to the gospel, the good news that there is redemption and restoration in Messiah Yahshua. And not let the things of this world be the things that we really focus on. It's so short term, because if all we live for is the world, then that's all we have. Once this life is over, we simply die. But if our focus has been on truly living, not living in the moment, but living a kingdom mindset for eternity, then we shall have life eternal in Messiah Yahshua. That's what it means to be in Him, is that life doesn't cease when we die in the flesh. It continues because we are beings that are like Him. We have been made spiritual. I don't understand it because we still have the physiological life that's tangible, that we are still incarnate. We still have this life to live out, but it is a temporary thing, and that it's for those that all they do is focus on this life and neglect our Creator, then all they have is what they have here in this life. And it just goes by too fast to then go, well, if that's all there is, that's all there is. When there's so much more that our Creator wants for us. That's part of the plan of redemption, is so that we can spend eternity with Him. And he talks about having this life that is led by the Spirit, and that He wants us to be His children, and that we can walk in Him. And that's what happens when we trust in Him. I love how he puts it in verse 17, where he says, and if children, you're also heirs. See, a child is an heir. So we become heirs because of Messiah Yahshua. And not just any kind of heir, but truly Elohim's. That means we belong to God. We're His possession. We talked about that earlier. And co-heirs with Messiah. Think about that a moment. If Yeshua is an heir and we are His co-heir, then everything that Messiah is going to receive as an heir, that same blessing is given to us. It's going to be measured out according to our good works, just as what Messiah receives is because of what He did which he did everything perfectly in redeeming mankind, and the works that he did pleased the Father, and he will have great rewards as his inheritance as a corporeal man, even though he is God-man, God in the flesh, to come in to redeem us, and he lived a perfect life. He set the example for us so that we could live our lives and be an example to others so that they too might come and be heirs with us. But we get to be co-heirs with Yahshua. Think about that for a moment. We might have some struggles here on this earth, and if you live in the country that I live in, which is America, and you're blessed the way that we've been blessed, we have no idea what it means to suffer. None whatsoever. We have been so blessed in so many ways that we've not had to suffer like many of our brothers and sisters around the world that do not have the conveniences or the conveniences that we have. They have living in poverty and living in difficult times, and yet they seem to be so happy because their joy is in Messiah, knowing that this life is just temporal and they're kingdom bound here now and for eternity. And so they see things so differently than we do sometimes because, again, we get stuck on what's happening now and we get indebted to this flesh. In other words, we start living our life only and trying to keep up with the world and doing the things of the world. But we're not supposed to. We're co-heirs with Yahshua, with Messiah. That is fantastic. But then there's a curve, there's a caveat here. There's a slider that comes in here that just kind of undermines all of this. It says, if. All of this promise, all of this the benefit that's for us, this blessing, has this caveat that says, if indeed we suffer with him. And what does that mean, to suffer? That means to be willing to die to ourselves, and the things that we might want to do, we put those aside and go ahead and do the things that Yah wants us to do. A lot of times we think of suffering as, I'm going to suffer physically where someone's tormenting me or picking on me, and that is part of it. I mean, Paul suffered greatly. He was stoned, he was beaten, he was thrown in prison, and there were many, many other believers in Messiah that have gone through the same fate. And then there are many, many, many believers also who have suffered as well, and yet they have been well off and did very well in this life, but they were willing to die to themselves. They didn't allow the things of this world to own them. They took charge, and they gave it all to Messiah, and they were willing to suffer, be self-sacrificing, to do things for others and to bless others as they live their life as an example of what a believer is supposed to, and that's to be like Messiah Yahshua. So this caveat is, if we indeed suffer. Are you and I willing to suffer a little bit today? Are we willing to sit back and say, okay, what in me needs to die today so that I can be more like my Messiah? Am I willing to let go of that one thing that I really like? Am I willing to give it all away? And sometimes that's what the Lord is just waiting for in order to pour out blessings on us, is for us to be willing to let go and have faith and trust in him completely and in everything that we do and say. Well, there's some things to think about. Am I willing to surrender all for him? I pray that this has been a blessing for you today. Blessings.